So God is sovereign, meaning that he has supreme power and authority and dominion and control over everything, right? But if God is sovereign over everything, then where does that leave free will, right? If God predestined things to happen or predestined things not to happen, then where does that leave choice? Do we even really have a choice in the matter at all? Or is God just this puppeteer that's controlling all things and just giving us the illusion that we have some sort of freedom and choice, when in reality, we don't? So probably one of the more famous examples in terms of predestination versus free will is the story of Moses and Pharaoh, or I guess more so God versus Pharaoh, where God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, but Pharaoh's hardening his heart as well, and there's this big question of who is hardening whose heart? Who is actually in control? Is Pharaoh choosing it, or is God controlling him? And I mean, I think that story has just been used over and over again and kind of been beat to death. So I'm going to use a different story instead to illustrate this point, and that is that one found in Daniel chapter 4. Now, the whole book of Daniel kind of gives this idea of sovereignty, right? God's sovereignty versus man's sovereignty. And even just kind of zooming out and talking about the whole Bible in general, right? Prophecy is kind of a big part of the Bible. And most of the prophecies in the Bible are conditional prophecies, meaning that if you do this, this will happen. But if you do that, that will happen, right? Now, there are Bible prophecies that are unconditional, meaning that no matter what, it's going to happen no matter what you do. For example, the Messianic prophecies, right? The ones concerning Christ and his coming. No matter what you do, no matter what choice you make, Christ is going to come. Nothing you can do about it. Okay, so that's an unconditional prophecy that you can't really change. You really have no choice in the matter. It's going to happen. But most of the other prophecies in the Bible are not that way. They are very conditional, right? You do have a choice in terms of what happens. And one such example is that found in Daniel. So in Daniel chapter 4, we have King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, he has this dream. And in this dream, he sees this big, glorious, majestic tree, and it's budding. It has very fruitful, and it has birds nesting in it, and it's feeding the beasts of the field underneath, and it's just this great tree. But he sees that some people come and cut the tree down, chop the tree down, and then they put these vines of iron and bronze around it to kind of keep it from growing. And then after a period of time, the tree is, the vines are removed from the tree and it's able to grow again. And so Daniel comes and he's like, okay, here's what the dream means, okay? This tree is you, right? You have this great, glorious, majestic kingdom, okay, that you have power and sovereignty over. But you haven't been using your power and authority in the right way. And just to step back a little bit, this whole idea of using, we all have a certain level of power or authority or influence over others, okay? And so if we are not using that power or authority or influence in the right way, God is saying, I'm taking that power away from you, right? So for example, let's say the president, right? If the president uses his power, his authority, his influence in a way that's unconstitutional, we have the power to impeach him, right? We have the power to take away that position of authority. So in the same way, that's what God is saying. Look, if you're not using your power or influence in the right way, I have the power to take that power away. And so that's what happens with King Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar is told, look, if you turn away from your sins and you turn towards righteousness, you show mercy, give to the poor, take care of people less fortunate, and so on and so forth, your kingdom will have tranquility and it will be extended, right? You have a long-lasting kingdom of peace. But if you don't, then your power and your kingdom will be taken away. So you have this conditional prophecy, right? Nebuchadnezzar has this choice. He can either A, use his power and influence and authority in the right way and therefore be blessed by it, or choose to use his power, authority, influence in a wrong way, in a negative way, and end up losing it. So for 12 months, Nebuchadnezzar is doing good. Right? He's doing good. Prophecy isn't being fulfilled, right? The prophecy said, look, if you'll be chopped down, but you can prevent that from happening by just doing the right thing. And for 12 months, Nebuchadnezzar does that. But after that 12 months, he's like, hold up, stop the presses. What is going on here? Isn't this my kingdom? Isn't this what I built up by my own power? Isn't this for my own glory and my own majesty? Why am I being so humble? Right? I'm the king. And so he's letting his pride and his arrogance kind of puff him up. And he starts to use his power in a corrupt way. And it's at that moment where God says, hey man, we had a deal and you turned away. So now your powers will be taken away. And so for 7 years, Nebuchadnezzar is, being, he's pretty much gone crazy, right? He's in the field, eating grass like an oxen. He's a madman. But after those 7 years, he's like, okay, God, I get it. I have sovereignty. I have power. I have influence. But you want me to use that power, influence, and authority in a positive way, in a good way. So that's what I'm going to do. And at that point, the prophecy was reversed, right? And he was able to regain his kingdom and his power and authority, right? So, but here's the thing. Yes, there was a prophecy that said this was going to happen. But at the same time, he still had the choice to choose which way he was going to go. So God may have said, this is what's going to happen. But at the same time, he still had a choice on which path he was going to take. It's kind of like those books, if you remember those books from like back in the day, those choose your own adventure books, where it's like, go to page 37 if you want to do this. Go to page 108 if you want to do that. Remember those books where you have this kind of choice, right, where you can choose which path you're going to take. But if life is like a create your own adventure book, God is like the author. He knows all the paths and where they all lead. But you, as just a reader, you don't know all the paths. You don't know, all this stuff. And so you have a choice on which path to take. And so God, being the author, he can say, take this path, it will lead here. Take that path, it will lead there. Because he knows. But we don't know. And so God can say, if you take this path, this is going to happen. But that doesn't mean that he's the one that's making us or forcing us to take that path, right? He may predict that that's what we're going to do because he knows that's what we're going to do. But it doesn't mean that he's forcing us to take that path. Okay, it's kind of like if you watch a movie and you're just like, look, I know this person's going to die at the end. If the person actually does end up dying at the end, it's not because you said it was going to die, okay? You had no control over what was going to happen in the movie. You just predicted what was going to happen, and it happened. That's what God is doing, right? Of course, the difference is that God isn't just predicting, he's just saying, hey, I know the future. I know this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to do. But it doesn't mean that he's one that's forcing you or predestining you to do it. You still have a choice on what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. Okay? So, yes, we have power and authority and sovereignty and influence. We have a choice. But we have to realize that God also has sovereignty over all as well. And so these two things are not necessarily contending against one another. Okay, we still have free will, even though God is sovereign. But we have to remember that if we use our sovereignty, our influence, our power, our position, or whatever, for something that is negative or horrible or corrupt, then God will take that away. And I mean, it's his right to, because that is the right thing to do, right? If someone's misusing their power and their position, you take that power and position away from them. Okay? And so, yes, we have free will. Yes, God is sovereign. And yes, he's omniscient. But those two things don't necessarily clash. They don't contradict one another. In fact, it makes complete sense. If God is who he says he is, if he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, and he is, sovereign, then he is going to know the end from the beginning. He's going to know all the paths to take and what they're going to lead to. But we, as the ones living confined to time and space, and we don't have that sort of foreknowledge, we still have a choice to make. And here's another thing to note. So if life is like a create your own adventure, or create your own path type of book, and God is the author of the book, then we should trust his leading, right? If God knows the end from the beginning, he knows where all the paths will lead and where they all, which one is the best one, which one's the right one, and so on and so forth, then we shouldn't be trying to pave our own way and do our own thing. We should trust what God says, and we should follow the path that he's paved for us, because if he knows the end from the beginning, he knows which path is the best one for us, then we should trust him and follow him. God is sovereign, and because of that, we should trust his leading and trust his guidance. Think on these things.